This is the second part in my series about the Dirty Dozen, the 12 error precursors for recreational aviators. If you have not seen the first part yet, I highly recommend that you do that before watching this one because it provides an important introduction and a lot of context. All caught up? Let's get to the good stuff. Welcome to Flight Coach. If you're new here, my name is Bas van Duin and it is my mission to help you get more out of life and your flying career through having less stress and more skills. And in this second episode about the Dirty Dozen, we're going to go into the remaining items on the list, give you some practical examples about them and some tips on dealing with them. And we will conclude this episode with a very interesting exercise you can do with your flying buddies, your instruction team, or your students to get more aware and to get the conversation going into dealing with these items. Stress. I already spoke a lot about this topic on the channel because one of the things I'm doing is helping pilots like yourself deal with stress and fear. It is also an error precursor not to be underestimated, and it is also one into which a lot of research has been done in the past decades. In the Netherlands we have a very rich aviation history, and of course we're also home to the oldest airline in the world, KLM. The Netherlands Association for Aviation Medicine and the Valk Foundation published a very interesting study. Take a look at this chart. It shows the average number of faults per hour versus the performance level of pilots. This leads us to the optimal stress point, i.e. the load should not be too low and it should also not be too high. But what does this graph show us actually? There is a sharp turning point after which the amount of faults rapidly increases when you further increase the stress of the pilot. So I'll give you a few seconds to think about the next question. What do you think is the safest point to be at in this graph? It seems to be the point just before the possible loss of control. Now take a look at this second graph. Horizontally we have the same axis, increasing the stress from left to right. But vertically now, however, we see the fault recovery percentage, i.e. is the pilot able to notice that he or she made a mistake and correct it. We see that the optimum is wider than in the previous chart, and in this case the optimum is the highest recovery possible. But it also starts to decline earlier. So now let's look at them combined. Where is the turning point actually? What is the safest point to be on this chart? Well, hopefully you don't need a lot of time to think about this. The turning point is actually halfway the maximum performance segment, instead of at the end. Now, of course, I don't know the exact definitions of these segments, and I don't know the exact context of this scientific research. But to be frank, I think that in relation to the point we're trying to make here with the Dirty Dozen, it is all quite arbitrary. I think the takeaway here, your optimum stress level, seen from a safety perspective, is probably somewhere else than where you would expect it to be. So how to deal with this one? Get a feel for where you are stress-wise. Maybe rate yourself during flying. Am I at a 0 now? Am I at a 5, at an 8, or at a 10? And where is my optimum? And try to visualize the charts I just shown you. Prepare yourself by visualizing, and you can do this while you're not flying. Just visualize the situations that would give you stress while flying. That helps you in lowering the stress when you're experiencing that situation. Lack of situational awareness. Now, if you do not know what the state of things around you is, you cannot predict how they will influence you or how you should deal with them. And oh my god, it is almost as if I knew that this episode was coming, but I already devoted an earlier episode solely to this topic, situational awareness. And to save you and me both a lot of time, I can highly recommend, if you have not seen that one before, go check it out after this episode. I will leave a link card right here. Norms, i.e. the way we do things around here. So this can include both good practices and bad practices. Safe behavior and dangerous behavior. Norms are the unwritten rules, things that we develop over time through experience and influence of others. The interesting thing to know about norms is that they can actually deviate from or even be contradictory to the official rules. I'll give you an example of a norm. My dad and I have been flying for 26 years now, and we've had the norm for a very long time that if we arrived at a takeoff location and one of us thought that the conditions were unsuitable to go fly, the both of us would stay on the ground. So even if one of us thought that the conditions were okay to go fly. And an example that is from the maybe opposite side of the scale, I've also spoken to people that have the philosophy, when I get to a launch site or flying location, I always fly when it is physically possible. To see if I can make a flight, and maybe I have to land early, maybe I have to make a top landing, maybe I get blown over. When I get to a lounge, I go there to fly. Tips on dealing with norms. It is okay to make new norms for yourself or to change existing norms if that leads to increased safety. The most important thing is try to make your norms and the norms of the group in which you're flying, try to make them conscious. Get them from the subconscious level to the conscious level, so you are able to talk about it and reflect upon it. If you appreciate the content that I'm producing on a weekly basis, please don't forget to press the like button, that would help me a lot. And also consider subscribing to the channel. Press the bell icon so you get notified when I upload a new release. So that's it. The list of the Dirty Dozen. You've heard all 12 of them. The ICAO has a list of over 300 of aero precursors. If you're interested in this matter, there's a lot more reading and research you can do into this topic. I also promised you to end this episode with an exercise. And this is an exercise intended for different constellations of people. So you can either do this with your group of flying buddies after a day or a week of flying, or you can do it with fellow instructors, or if you are an instructor, you can do it with your students. And the objective of this exercise is to make it normal to talk about these subjects, because to some people it's still quite of a taboo. And two, as a tool to help you in your reflecting on these matters. You take a piece of paper, you write all these 12 points on them, and the other participants, they do the same thing. And you first start each, just by yourself, rating your own susceptibility on a scale from 1 to 10 behind each of these points. So on stress, well, I'm very susceptible to stress, I score myself a 10. And the point pressure, I'm not susceptible to that at all. Maybe you rate yourself a 1. And you do that for all these points. And once everyone has completed their paper, you just give it to the person that's sitting on your right. So there's no more changing the numbers there, guys and girls. Now you turn the paper over that you just got from the person sitting to your left, and you start rating the other people in the group at all these points of the Dirty Dozen. And after you've done that, you can have a very interesting conversation about the differences. Let's say there is Peter, who scores himself a 1 at the point of stress, while almost all the other people in the group score him at an 8. Now, wouldn't you agree that this is a very interesting point to talk about with Peter? Now, there are a few things that you should be aware of while doing this exercise. Is that there will be certain people that will score themselves a 1 at each and every point. Yes, I've seen this happen. They are just that good. This is usually an indication of a complete lack of the ability to assess themselves, or what is more likely, they just don't feel really comfortable in sharing how they feel about themselves. Another option that you may see appearing is I rate myself a 5 at all of these. And the alternative to this exercise on rating yourself on each of the points is just ordering the points from 1 to 10. In that way, you're sure that you have a range to discuss. Please let me know what you think about this episode. I really appreciate your feedback. Also, let me know what you're planning on doing with this exercise, and if you did it, what the results were. See you next time. See you in the air.